Hello, so I just want to give you a quick and fairly simplistic breakdown as to how I made those curtains that I sort of showed you. And as I say, it's super simple and it shouldn't weigh down on your machine too much, although there is some dynamics involved. So let's get started. So how I did this was I just took a plane and then I pressed NB so I could see my guides right there. And what I did instantly is I changed this to plus Z in order for us to make sort of the plane go up like this. Then I decided to decrease the width, but obviously this is purely dependent on what you're making. Actually, no, I didn't. I decided to, or did I? Well, either way, it doesn't matter. You decrease the width, decrease the height as to sort of however you sort of want to make your object look. So we can leave it like this. So we can, actually we don't want to increase the height segments, we want to increase the width segments. So we're going to do 20 width segments, and what we're now going to do is, because as you can see, we've got the floor here, so because we've got 400 centimeters in the height, what we can now do is, I believe in the Y, we can go to, yep, we can just half that, and then we will be perfectly level on the playing field. Now, you don't have to do this, although I'm going to do it anyway, but I'm going to raise this by 5 centimeters more, so it's just a little bit off the ground. And the reason I do this is because I'm also going to put a plane here, and I'm going to do 400, and we want this quite big, so we're going to do times 20, and then we're going to do times 20 again. So just something to sort of collide against. So that's our natural floor. So let's rename this. So we'll call this curtain. We'll call this floor. And this is purely up to you and sort of how you want things to react. But the reason I like doing this is because it gives it slightly more variation. And what I'm talking about now is by including a landscape. And what we are going to want to do is we're going to want to bring this down quite a lot, but not, you know, not too much. So let's say 15 on this, and we can do 600 times, again, 10, 600 times 10 here. And we can increase the scale a little bit, go up. Leave it like that. And as you can see here, you could also, in this regard, you could add a plane and then add a noise effector. But I think with the noise effector, sometimes you need it gives you, you have to do a lot of playing around, whereas for what you're sort of looking to do and what I'm looking to do here, it's quite fast what you want to do, and there's a lot of adjustments here in the landscape. And all it's going to do is that when the curtain sort of pulls along, it's going to give it something more to sort of catch against, rather compared to that of just a simple and flat plane. But because we're using cloth, we're not going to be using something like a rigid body in simulation tags here. So we're not going to use like a rigid body or a soft body or a collider body or even a ghost body. Because we're using cloth and we're trying to create cloth, we can just hit Shift C in order to type what we're looking for, and we're going to look for a cloth collider. So that's going to go both on the landscape and also the floor, because if it goes through the floor, which it shouldn't, the cloth is then going to collide against that. Whereas with the curtain itself, because the curtain is going to be cloth, so cloth in itself has three things that we need to think about. We need to think about the dynamics of the cloth, such as the gravity. We also need to think what the cloth is going to be stuck onto and how it's going to stick to that. And we finally need to think about how cloth looks in real life, because cloth isn't paper thin. Even though some cloth might look paper thin, it does actually have some thickness to it overall. So what we're going to do first is we're going to add we're going to click on our item here. So we're going to click away from all of these, and I'm going to click on cloth. So that has instantly given the cloth some dynamic. So if we should play this now, and it is, for some reason, I don't know why it's not playing. I know why it's not playing. I forgot to tell you, with cloth, one of the main things that we need to also keep in mind is that cloth items are not parametric, so we need to make these editable, which can either be done over here by, you can press this little icon here, or you can just press C. But before I do any of that, or what I always like to do is I take these items here and I held down Control there and drag, which then creates copies of them. I then press Alt G to put these into a null, and then I press Alt once and then Alt twice, and then that hides them using the traffic light system. And the traffic light system we're going to get to in a second, because the traffic light system is really handy, because if we turn this off on the top one, this hides it from view, and if we turn the second one off, this hides it from render region. And what we're actually going to do with the landscape is that, because we don't need to see the landscape, we can hide it from view, but we want it to be apparent in the render, possibly, because we want to see how it's affecting the item in the render. So what we're going to do now is hit C to make this editable, and you can see it's gone editable now with the triangle and the 3 dots. Let's go to cloth again, and now, there we go. There is your simplistic cloth. That doesn't obviously look very realistic, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the start of the timeline, going to increase this to 200, and there we go. Now, because we have got the cloth itself sort of working as is, we need to, the one thing that we can see now is that the cloth just falls. So we need to, like a flag, we need to attach this cloth to something and to make it sort of hold. And the perfect tag for that is the cloth belt tag. But we need to belt this onto something. So what I find the best in this situation, and this can be done with many different objects, but I'm just going to use a cylinder. And for this, we're going to use I believe a plus, no, not plus Y, plus Z. Let's go to the last one, plus X. And we're going to make this, and I can't remember how high we made this, how high we made the curtain. So we made that 400 by 250. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make this 400. And for some reason that is way too big. Oh no, because we're making the height. So we're making 250. That's me being stupid there. There we go, that fits perfectly. 250, and we need this to be fairly, we don't need it to be big at all, so let's say, not 1,000. Let's make it 10. And because the height of this is 400, there we go, and it fits perfectly on the top. But now, once again, because this is going to be, this is not going to be parametric, we're going to get this again, go Control left click drag, and we're going to put that into there, and that's all going to be hidden so we can keep a copy of that one. Now we are going to add a cloth belt onto our curtain, and the cloth belt is very simple in what it asks for. It asks what do you want me to belt onto, and then it asks you to set the set points. And again, super simple. But what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to go into a different view. So I'm going to click here, or I could click the middle mouse button, and we're going to go to the front camera view, number 2, and then zoom out. And as we can see it here, this is the top. But for now, well, what I can do straight away is that I can say, well, what do I want this to belt onto? I want this to belt onto the cylinder. So let's make this editable. Go back to the cloth belt, put this on here, which now it is basically saying, yes, it's belted on something, but nothing is set. So if I was to, once again, to play this, it should technically just fall, which as you can see, it does. Because although it's technically belted onto something, which is the cylinder, it's also not belted onto anything because we haven't set any points. So what we want to do is, once again, go into the front view, turn this off by pressing Alt and then clicking twice to make them both go red. And now we're going to go into point mode. And by clicking away from everything and then clicking on the curtain, we can see all of our beautiful little points here. Now, if we just want to create a simple curtain, then what we can do here is go onto our rectangle selection, select these top points right there, and then as you can see, these are selected also here. And what we're going to now do is go to our cloth belt tag, and you're going to see the color of these change from an orangey color to a yellow color. So if we do this now and click set, and there you go, and you can see these are now like going up in order to basically say we are belted to something above us, which in itself is the cylinder. So we can turn this once again back on, and if we play this again, we should now see that this will not just drop to the floor like it did before. And there we go. So that is sort of the simple way of making cloth work as it should. But we're going to go a little bit more in depth with this. And as you can see, this curtain here, it has literal no thickness. We can, it is paper thin. So cloth doesn't work like that in the real world. And when we can see some breakages here like this, the reason that you might get some breakages down here is because it is so thin and it's intersecting with one another. Well, for intersections, we can fix that super simply, and we can go to the Expert tab, and we can turn on self-collisions. So then self-collisions shouldn't happen against one another, but they might happen against one another. So another great option that we can turn on here is global intersection analysis. And what global intersection analysis does is it analyzes the whole scene, and it says, okay, self-collisions is on, but global intersection analysis will say, let's go even further with this. We need to work out why it's colliding, and then we're going to stop this. And then if we turn the subsampling up, this will, the higher you go, the longer it's going to take to cache and to render out, but the less intersections that you're going to get. So I'm not going to turn it on now, but what I could do is I could calculate some cache. And this is going to go super fast because of my machine. And now you can see this, but I can also go back one frame so I can see as to how it's evolving. Whereas if I hadn't have cached this, I couldn't go forward and back, because every single time the simulation is creating itself dynamically every single time. So every single simulation is going to be different depending on how the cloth decides to drop itself that time. And because in this situation the cloth is dropping down, what I'm going to do is here I'm going to empty the cache, and I'm going to take the forces. I'm going to take the gravity here, and it's negative 9.81, but because I want the cloth to be quite heavy and sort of like a lead sort of blanket, I'm going to take this down to negative 25. And as I was saying previously about the thinness of this cloth, the way that we can work around this is not by using sort of a common extrude up here. We're going to go onto the curtain itself, and we're going to hit Shift C, and we're going to add a cloth surface, and we can do this by holding Alt and then clicking, and then that makes the curtain a parent of the cloth surface itself. And as you can see here, there is currently no thickness, but if we go to something like 2 centimeters, and as you can see here, cloth now has a beautiful little bit of thickness. And if we was to render this out, well, not render this out, we can play this, and we can press NA if we want to, if we don't see all the lines. And let's take a look at this now. So we get more of a nice rippled flag look, and it gives it more of a sort of a, yeah, like a nice hanging flag. And we could put like a company logo on here, or like a country's ensign on there, and you make it really pretty. One way that we can sort of see this get affected even further is if we add a wind effector. So a little wind here, drag this away a little bit, and drag this up. And which way are we affecting here? Let's turn the turbulence up to something like 45. And so I believe we're going in the wrong direction, so we're going to want to go in the, yeah, I'm going to turn this 180. And if we was to turn this up to something like 25, yeah, and as we can see, that's getting a little bit more, a little bit more aggressive. And 75. Let's go to the start again, turn this up to 45, and we can actually sort of see how the cloth is now reacting. Yeah, there we go. That's sort of the kind of thing that we're looking for. But as you can see, it's still trying to keep itself down because the cloth itself is, as I said, to negative 25 gravity. So it's still trying to think it's like very, very weighty. So everything is trying to pull itself down as it should, which is exactly what we want. But what you're saying is that you're looking for more of like a hospital curtain, whereas this, you can see it's very, very, very flat and quite plain. So the way in which we can get around this, once again, is by going into all of our views. And this is one thing that you need to realize with cloth, is that every single time you change something in cloth, you need to reset the cloth belt tag every single time, because if you don't, it's then going to stay onto its previous belted state. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear this from here, and these should now go back to the orangey color. If I was to click on the curtain, yeah, they come back to the orangey color. And we're once again going to hide this cylinder. So cylinder hidden, and actually let's pull this curtain out of here so that we don't sort of get the sort of the thick surface where we can't, where, as you know, you can see it gets a little bit more difficult to see. So we're just going to pull this out of the hierarchy for now. And one thing I always find really awkward, annoying, is that the axis always gets in the way when I'm trying to do this. So if I go to filter and then go to axis, I can turn the axis off. And you want the more hospital curtain, which has got this sort of the very triangular pleats. So the way I found to do this for you is initially I select every other point, like so. There probably is a simpler way of doing this, but I just haven't come around to it. And then, funnily enough, we're going to turn the axis back on. And I'm going to click on my Z-axis here. I'm just going to left click and then hold down Shift, and we're going to pull this back. And this is a great time to explain to you that this will not work. And the reason this will not work is because, as of now, the whole object is still very, very dynamic. And the only way that we can get around this is basically going to the cloth tag itself and basically saying stop being dynamic. And to do this, we can either drag this off elsewhere, or the easiest way is just to go to the cloth tag, basic, and then disable. And as you can see, the little cloth tag has gone grey. Points are still selected, so once again, left click, hold down Shift, and then pull these back. And I found, and I think it was 20 centimeters worked for me, but again, just test what works for you. So we have our points pulled back there, and if we go back to all of our views here, we can see that we have now got more of a hospital-esque style curtain, which is great. The problem is now is that if we was to set these points, we have got way too many points, and we're not only just belting on the top here, we're belting on everything. So we can actually try this out. If we was to re-enable our cloth tag, and for some reason that has messed up. And why has this messed up? Okay, so point mode, curtain. Okay, so I can explain to you as to why this one messed up. The reason why this messed up is because the cloth tag itself actually stores a a lot of information, and although sort of the cloth tag is a fantastic tag to work with, it's also a very annoying tag in the sense that, as I say, it stores a lot of information, and that information sometimes isn't needed or wanted. So the best way I find to work with cloth tags themselves is purely and simply just deleting them. So sometimes remember what you have put on there. So we put on the self collisions, and we also changed to the negative 25. That's all we change, but quite often we can change a lot of information. So sometimes it's just easier to drag your cloth tag onto a null and save all that information, and then if you then recreate the cloth tag, you can then just copy and paste all of that information onto your new cloth tag. So what we're going to do here, as I say, delete the cloth tag, and we are going to once again select these points by turning off the axis because that gets in the way. Do this and this and this very fast. I understand this video is getting quite long. and we're going to go back, turn our axis on, left click, hold down shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, perfect, and there we go. It's all looking good once again. And then, as I say, if we add this cloth tag on, as you can see, it now will not mess up because it's a brand new cloth tag. So let's turn this on to -25. Let's turn this on to self-collisions, and now we are going to go into our front view because we don't need all of these points. We're going to go to our front view, select all the top points, not just the one after the other points, all of the points, because we want to belt the whole thing onto, which if you look at a hospital curtain, in some way or form it's all belted, because if it wasn't then we'd get sag in there. So select all the top points, go to our cloth belt tag, we're going to hit set. These are now yellow, so we can tell that these are set, and we're going to drag this back into the hierarchy of the cloth surface to add some thickness to this object. See a little thickness there, and this now should all work as we want it to. So if we go back to the start, and there is your hospital style curtain. And if you wanted to sort of move and open as I did, the way you can do this is just simply grabbing the cylinder, and you can go to the coordinates, and then you can select the movement of which direction you want to go to. So we could go on the X. So we drag that along there. We can go back to 0. And as you can see, as I said, some self-collisions are happening. The reason those self-collisions are happening so drastically there is because we're taking it from one point and then saying move to a brand new point instantly, and that will mess everything up always, because when you say go from one point at 1 second and then go move across 600 centimeters, that's going to mess anything up. So the self-collisions will always drastically happen there, but if you used to say put it at 0 on 0 frames and then on 50 frames move it back -600 and then set a keyframe, that should work very well, and there shouldn't be too many back collisions. But as I said, once again, just turn on global intersection analysis and that will work perfectly. Now my final point that I'm going to say is that if you can find that when you are making this cloth move, that it's sort of it's not moving and flowing as you want it to, well, the cylinder doesn't have to be belted onto the top. In this regard, the cylinder, yes, it is belted onto the top here, but you can also belt it onto the side, you can belt it onto this side, you can belt it onto the bottom, you can belt it wherever you want to. But just remember that when you're using a cloth belt tag, you need to clear your points to take them from yellow to the orangey color, and then you can go into your front view, and we can stop this right now, go into our front view, and say we was to belt onto the side. Well, if we pull this out of here and we go to the start, so play this up, if you was to want to belt onto the side, all you'd have to do is you'd have to go to here, go to your cloth belt tag, and then we would have cleared, so these aren't yellow, so clear, all of your points are orange, remove these ones, and then we just belt it onto the side, and then we can add the cylinder, and then we've changed the orientation of the cylinder to belt onto the side. I hope that helps in some regard. If I can help you in any other way, just let me know, but this should sort of give you quite a simple and quite rapid way of being able to create your curtain and cloth simulation. Again, I know this isn't what you're looking for, but you could also add this into a subdivision surface, so then you could really make it quite a nice sort of cloth simulation, which anytime that you're going to add more geometry to any of this kind of stuff, it's always going to slow down. So if we do this now, it looks beautiful, but at the same time it's going to take a lot longer to work itself out. But once again, we can go back to the cache, calculate the cache. As I said, on my machine, this should go fairly fast. There we go, and there is your cloth simulation. So if you have any more questions for me, just send me a message, or I can make you another video. But this is my introduction to you as to how to make a fairly simple but also a fairly realistic cloth simulation.